Greetings, peace and blessings. Hey y'all, hey y'all, hey y'all. Come on in, come on in, come on in. Hope everybody's having a great day. Can you put a one in the chat if the audio is good? The audio to or the mic to music ratio is good. A two in the chat or an explanation if I need to do something different. I want to make sure my audio is straight. Peace and blessings, everybody. Come on in, come on in, come on in. So we got some interesting stuff going on right now. Man, this Diddy thing is, I think most of us could see that it was coming and that the writing was on the wall at some point. This man has been running amok and doing what he's been wanting to do for a while. For some decades now. And I'm sure that rabbit hole goes super duper deep, right? But I don't know, peace and blessings to his family, prayers up to his, his loved ones that are all affected by his behavior, and also prayers and peace and blessings to those that have been affected by those victims or the ones that he has victimized. Because everybody that has been touched got somebody that loved them too. So I don't feel no type of way about it, right? Yes. Hey, y'all. All right. We got Faith Keeper in the building. Thank you for becoming a new member. I appreciate your support. Thank you. Thank you. And there is actually a link in the chat if anybody else wants to entertain becoming a new member. Definitely would be appreciated. I try to bring quality content. I'm doing better at being more consistent. Definitely want you to feel as if you're getting what you've invested in, your money's worth. So we got Dimple D in the building. Peace and blessings to you. Easy Did It is in the building. Thank you for being here. We got Santino in the bushes. Appreciate you at least announcing that you're here. Salute, peace and blessings. So we're going to get right off into it, right? There was a judiciary committee meeting with the parties. And the topic was a hot topic, of course, and it's one I've been covering when it comes down to the illegal immigrants, the border situation. There not being a vetted border. People are just coming in nilly-willy, and is putting our entire country at risk. Our families, our land, our safety. There's a lot going on, and I really believe and feel like it is like severely in our faces that we as Americans don't matter. We don't matter, and we don't matter to the point where they don't even feel like they owe us an explanation when the resources, all of the provisions that are being given, displacing veterans, displacing citizens, not giving them any recourse, and replacing them with bodies that are coming into this country with no accountability. We don't know who they are. We don't know what their background is. And furthermore, we don't know their agenda. We have no clue as to why they're coming here. And a lot of them are coming here in big groups of military age, right? So with that being said, that has to be alarming for many of us. I know it is for me. And so we're going to get right off into this judiciary meeting where it approaches the topic of the immigrants, and we have several mothers that have had young small children unalived, tormented before they were unalived at the hands of illegal immigrants that have come into this country. And there has been no sense of justice for these families that have lost children to horrific crimes. And we're going to hear some of their voices. But I do want to go back a little bit in the video to give some context from qualified and foot soldiers on the ground's testimony as to really from a legalese point and from a realistic, scientifically data entry perspective. So we're looking at the facts here. We're looking at documented data substantiating and saying this is what we're dealing with. And I'm not sure if a lot of people are aware, right? So without further ado, I'm going to be stopping it. I sped up the video. So if I reiterate what they're saying, it's just to, make sure that we all understand what is being said, because words matter. And the people that are speaking on the mic, they're saying things that I feel we really need to be informed of and need to hear. Salute your thoughts. Sisters in the chat. We got Laverne and Shirley in the house. Thank you for being here, sis. I appreciate you. All right, let's go, y'all.
Well, what I can tell you is that the crimes that we're seeing based on our investigations, we're well over 50%.
Wow. I see my time's expired. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thanks, gentlemen. Gentleman yields back. The gentleman from Maryland is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My staff prepared a speech for me today. I'm going to set that aside and just speak to the witnesses today who are survivors. And I want to say that I certainly offer my condolences. My heart goes out to you for the losses that you've suffered. I did want to say this too, though, in a slight departure from the script that these hearings typically take. I'm a former prosecutor. I spent 4 years as a prosecutor here in Washington, D.C. During the height of the crack wars, we averaged about 450 to 500 murders here per year. And then a short time after that, I became the state's attorney in Prince George's County, Maryland. Ms. Moore and Ms. Nobles, I think you're both from Maryland. And I think the people that handled your cases were state's attorneys as well. And one of the things I found, I got there in office in 2002. I didn't realize it when I was running, but there was a gang called MS-13 that had come to the district, Maryland and Virginia, and was a highly violent gang. They are organized criminally, and they were 20 plus years ago at the time, and they commit extreme violent acts along the lines of what you're talking about. Including, I think the first case we had was they killed a witness with a golf club. It's a 14-year-old girl. They tricked her into going into a cemetery, and they beat her to death in the head using a golf club to kill her. And I guess Bush was the president at the time, and we had similar kinds of issues as what we're talking about today. People going and coming back. They get deported from here even after being prosecuted. They made them serve out their jail time, then they would deport them back to El Salvador. But one of them I talked to subsequently, he'd become a witness against other members in the gang, said basically they just viewed it as a free trip home because they knew that they could come back whenever they wanted to. And that was 2003. I think one of...
So this was in 2003, where he is given his experience, right? And he is saying that these problems have been existing prior to the borders being put to the point where they are now being unregulated, open, not properly monitored. Ports of entries are being, just saturated. And this whole concept and this whole activity is being allowed by the current administration. So back in 2003, there were issues with people being able to commit crimes on this soil, leave and then come back because there are no consequences. There's no accountability. Now, I don't know how that speaks to the administration of 2003, but it kind of gives context, in my opinion, to when Trump came on board and was elected president. That was one of the first orders that he wanted to address. And he wanted to close the border or heavily monitor who was coming into this country, to vet them, make them go through due process, right? So again, I just wanted to reiterate, this was back in 2003. Let's go.
the things I'd like to say to you all is I deeply respect taking up the mantle that you've taken up today. You're able to speak with a moral authority that politicians like me really can't. And I know you'd rather trade that in a heartbeat to get your loved ones back. And I know we can't do that today. But I'll say this as well. I've been involved in public service for a long time. In fact, that was my first boss in politics right there, John Conyers. He was the chairman of the committee last time it passed legislation on immigration, which was over 35 years ago. And I also had a chance to, and they did that on a bipartisan basis, by the way. And when I was state's attorney in Prince George's County, we did a joint prosecution with the federal prosecutor in a RICO case. We took down 23 gang leaders. The prosecutor in that case was Rod Rosenstein. And Rod and I had known each other because we've been on the opposite sides of the Whitewater case. I worked for the Senate Democrats, essentially defending the Clinton administration. He worked for Ken Starr, essentially trying to take down the Clinton administration. And he was obviously a Republican. I was obviously a Democrat. But we were able to come together and work that case together and do it in a successful way. Now, you'll notice that at this hearing, that there's no legislation connected to the testimony that's being presented today. I think one of you actually referenced Ted Cruz legislation in the Senate side, but there's nothing pending here in the House that would address the problems we're talking about today. We had the chance to do that, but we chose not to do that. The chairman and my Republican colleagues chose not to do that, and there's a story behind that I don't have time to tell, but it doesn't really get to the point I want to make to you, which is this. Beyond this election cycle, because that's an issue that's in the way of getting something done right now that'll address the kinds of problems that you're talking about, there's going to be more opportunities for you to use your voices and your platforms to address these kinds of issues. I'm a Democrat, you're Republicans, or they're Republicans, you may be independents, I don't know. But I know that there's truth on both sides on this issue, and there's a way to get to a place where we can resolve it.
So what he's really wanting to do is come to a bipartisan agreement. He wants for both of the parties, the Democrats and the Republicans, because this is a severe enough of an issue and it's at a crisis point that differences need to be put to the side. And you have your Democrats and many of them, and of course, many of the Republicans that want this situation rectified, or at least put more of under a constraint to where there's more order. The laws are being actually adhered to and followed that are currently in place, that are being ignored to a massive scale, in my opinion. So he's just presenting that, you know what, we need to come together. We need to agree to disagree on some things. But I think that the bigger picture is that we all want our country safe. We all want our citizens safe, and we don't need a free-for-all from all over the world, from all of these other different countries coming onto the U.S. soil, wreaking havoc and not having any regard for our laws, our people, our citizens, any of that. And they're bringing a lot of savage mentalities because you have a lot of these people that are being exiled, whether it's formal or informally. Like if they're getting released from prisons in different countries, they're not allowed to come back. So now it has become the United States problem, right? So now he's just saying, come on now, we got to look at the bigger picture. And I agree with him on that. Even though my question is why certain laws regarding immigration, the border due process that has been implemented and in place for many, many decades, why isn't that being adhered to or upheld in the courts of law when it's being supported by an administration that feels like it owes no one an explanation? They're going to allocate our tax monies that should be for the citizens, the vets, the programs of this soil, and allocate them to people coming in because you have a desired agenda to stay in power. And whatever that looks like for you, many of the citizens of this country are becoming collateral damage. But yet and still, we have people that are standing their ground and saying, I am going to vote for Kamala Harris because I don't like Trump. When it's, shout out to Kwame Brown Bus Life, who always says it's about who we like, what is that going to cost us? if she that has done nothing to benefit the people, forget Black people, just the people in general. She's done nothing to benefit the people since she's been in office as vice president-elect to vice president. And now, well, this is what I'll do when I become president. Well, you are in a position to do some of those things right to the damn now. And you choose not to. So, not to belabor the point, because y'all know I will get loose. However, this is what this brother is saying. He was saying, look, let's agree to disagree, but let's look at the bigger picture and let's work together to achieve that bigger picture. Let's go.
Won't do it in a partisan way. And so I want to thank you for coming today. And I urge you to continue the struggle, the fight, the voice. I think Ms. Nungari, you said you will forever be her voice. I know that's true for all of you. And I encourage you to continue in that fight and that effort. But I hope that we can get to a point where we move beyond the partisanship, beyond the politics that have nothing to do with resolving the problem, and can get to a place where we can address it. Just for an additional moment, Mr. Chairman, if I could read Justice Kavanaugh, this is a quote I read every time we have a hearing like this. And he's a Republican, obviously. But I want to say, as the district court found, the executive branch does not possess the resources necessary to arrest or remove all of the non-citizens covered by the arrest and removal statutes. That reality is not an anomaly. It is a constant. For the last 27 years since those laws were enacted in their current form, all 5 presidential administrations have determined that resource constraints necessitated prioritization in making immigration arrests. In light of the inevitable resource constraints and regularly changing public safety and public welfare needs, the executive branch must balance many factors when devising arrest and prosecution policies. I read that just to say this. 5 administrations have come and gone. We still haven't gotten things done. We're not going to get anything done today from a legislative standpoint, but there's a way to get it done if we can come together and work in a bipartisan way to do it. And so I thank you for the work that you've done and you will continue to do. And I yield.
So why in 5 decades and in 50 years aren't we any closer to obtaining a feasible resolution regarding this immigration situation, the immigration laws that are in place, when you have frickin' frack Democrats and Republicans fighting like cats and dogs and always got a point to prove. And again, the citizens are becoming collateral damage. We have been collateral damage. How is it that our deficit is so high, but the taxpayers and the people that actually keep this country momentum going and keep it fluid, we don't have no say-so as to where these monies go. In this administration alone, billions have been given to Ukraine, and yet and still nobody feels like we're owed an explanation as to why. At least not the truth, in my opinion, is what I deem. But we have these parties fighting while we have people's children coming up missing, and then when they're found, they're dismembered, they're distorted, their body parts are unrecognizable, they were tormented before they were unalived. And by no means am I saying that we don't have crime here, because we got our own set of issues, but why compound the situation by allowing people from other countries where those native countries don't even want them anymore because they're more of a problem for them to stay there than it is for them to send them here. And yet and still we have a government, a ruling government at this point, that is welcoming them with open arms with food, shelter, clothing, a place to sleep, pulling them up so they don't have to be pulled up by their own bootstraps. They're given a leg up. And we have the people that have built this country and the ancestral lineage of those people that built this country from the ground up can't even utter the words reparations at a table, much less be invited to sit at any table where they use legalese language, where they talk about topics that will affect one's family for generations to come. Don't have a voice, in other words. That's where we're going with it, right? So I want to make my position clear. I've been speaking on politics, but I am not pro-politics. I think it's a smoke and mirrors game that's been played for many years, and they keep implementing it and playing the same game because it keeps working, to the point where I feel like I have to say, to be honest, that voting for the lesser of two evils is where we're at. A lot of us and many of us don't like or succumb and to support either one of the candidates. We have Kamala that was given to us. She was placed right before us. Nobody elected her. Nobody voted for her. The one time that people did vote for her, she got no votes. So they said, okay, well, in order to further our agenda, we're just going to give her to you because we can. And then we have Trump, whether his last two assassination attempts were legitimate or not, that's the story we're being told. And if there's any truth to him being legitimately, and it being the truth that there is a mark on his life, this is just the beginning. The man hasn't even been reelected. So his whole life, he's going to have to be on guard if he values it at any point. It's a mess. It is a hot mess. And I wanted to I know there are times where people's attention span is not very long for topics or videos like this. But this is one of the reasons why I think as a people collectively, we are illegitimate, ill-informed, and uninformed when it comes to the political arena, which unfortunately is their game. And in order to win on any level, we have to play their game. You can't play a game if you don't know the rules. If you're not aware of what the rules are, who made the rules, who enforces the rules, and whose game is it? Let's continue.
Back to balance.
The gentleman yells back before you go into the gentleman from Arizona. I would just point out, bad things may have happened 20 years ago, but obviously more bad things are happening now in light of 10 million people in 3.5 years coming into the country. That's the different dynamic. That's what our witnesses are talking about. I yield to the gentleman from Arizona.
If I might, Mr. Chairman?
I gave you an extra 2 minutes.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. And what I point out is, I don't want to get distracted by responding to all of what I would call blather I just heard. But I will say this. The Republican Party joined with Democrats to pass H.R. 2 15 months ago, and that was a border security bill. And that would have taken care of a lot of issues that we've seen on the border. So I first want to thank, in particular, all our witnesses for coming, but in particular, pay homage to Ms. Nobles, Ms. Aguirre, Ms. Fundner, Ms. Morin, and Ms. Nungare. Thank you for your courage and your very poignant testimony today, and we won't forget. But I want to read a quote here from one of the witnesses that the Democrats invited. Quote, but cruel and inhumane actions and policies by the United States Border Patrol, Texas Department of Public Safety, and local law enforcement have made it incredibly difficult for individuals fleeing violence and insecurity to live safely. Close quote. Sheriff, an open border that lets people come in by the millions, unvetted, that terrorize Americans. Can you describe that as anything but cruel and inhumane?
What we're seeing is very cruel. When I'm looking in the eyes of 11-year-old girls who have been brought across the border and been raped, when we have young families who have been brought across the border as victims of human trafficking landing in the United States, specifically to what I can speak to in the central San Joaquin Valley of California, not one or two, these are hundreds of people coming across as victims, where they're brutally raped, beaten, and used in the sexual way and in the sex industry. It's cruel. I feel that if we secure our border, we vet the people coming in, we identify the most egregious and felonious and those with mental health conditions, that are impacting the safety of Americans and Californians as to what I can speak to, I would identify your statement as being true, very cruel.
So just
So, an 11-year-old, and this is what bothers me about that, because it always goes back to our children for me. You have an 11-year-old young girl that they're trying to normalize. The torment and the unaliving of our children. And we have no voice. We have no say so. We have no recourse. We can't even get a system in place or enforce the system that is supposed to legitimately be in place to recognize and acknowledge these people coming over the border. So when they commit these crimes, the mothers and the fathers, they have to bury their children, if they even have a body to bury, if they even find them. Because a lot of these cartels and these gangs that are here, not coming, they're here. And they're continuing to allow them here. Drugs is not the only trade that they are vested in. It is human trafficking. And if we don't know who these people are, how can these people be brought to justice for violating and disseminating people's children and changing the lives of these families forever? And you have people that are sitting back and watching this monstrosity. And what troubles me the most, when I see Kamala cackling on a stage, playing her role, very poorly might I add, but she's still playing a role. She knows what's going on because it's on her watch that it's being allowed. You're going to have to deal with the maker at some point, Miss Lady. But for her to be able and capable of laughing, of acting like it doesn't exist, of talking about shit like her affiliation with HBCUs and sororities and sisterhood and Indian dishes and dancing at barbecues when she can't even speak the lingo effectively. I am almost white in hue of skin, and I got more flavor than she does. It bothers me that you know that our children are being victimized on a day-to-day basis. It's the most lucrative game out here. Brutal, savage. And you can go from city to city and mount stages and podiums and laugh like there's something funny about what you do and what you have been a part of for the past 3.5 years. I don't play about our children. And I feel some type of way because, again, they're the ones that are being victimized the most and affected the most. That's not enough, though. To add insult to injury, you're giving all of the money and the resources and the opportunities to further an agenda at the behest and at the cost of our children's future. If I wasn't so angry, I would cry because I feel our children's pain. when they don't even know why they have it. This is a messed up world we living in. And if you don't think we living in the last days, you're mistaken. Let's continue.
Or relational or contextual matter. The Yuma sector, which is one of the largest on the southwest border, in the last year of the previous administration, their encounters were about 8,600. And that includes unaccompanied minors, single men, family units, and others. About 8,500. During the height of what we've seen going on under this administration, the Biden-Harris plan on the border, Yuma at one point was getting that weekly. There have been weekends that they've gotten that. It's now back a pace where it takes about 3 to 4 weeks to get that. What they experienced in 1 year, that small community is seeing about once a month now. And it comes with it the flow of individuals that are totally non-vetted. Away they go. We don't know where they're going. The number one got-away corridor, the Tucson sector in which I live. Number one got-away. We don't know who they are or where they're going. We know that they are trying like crazy to evade capture. And they get into the communities, and you see what's happened by the test.
We are welcoming them here. We have given them an open invitation to come here with the same mentality, with the same way of living, with the same mindset, with the same everything. Where they caused an uproar in their native lands, they're going to bring that same stuff here. And it's not bad enough. We just open the borders and say, come on in, but we going to help you. And we going to spit in the people that have a right to this soil. We're going to spit in their faces.
Today. And I keep on my computer, and I was just looking at it earlier today. There literally were hundreds of articles over the last 3 months of violent crimes perpetrated on Americans and those who are legally in the country by those who have illegally come into the country and been released. It isn't a matter necessarily of resources because there are ICE beds and ORR beds available. It is a matter of policy because they won't let you, Sheriff, actually report to ICE and request information. And if there's an ICE hold, can you turn them over to ICE? You cannot. It is policy that has driven the grief that you see here today.
These people are not, these government organizations are not cohesive. They're not working together. And they're discouraging depending on the agenda. And I'm going to be saying that word a lot because that is what's driving all of this stuff that otherwise wouldn't make any sense, not logically. In order to further the agenda, you have certain departments and organizations being told, you don't touch that. I know why your organization was created in the first place, why it's being funded by government money. But if you wanted to continue to be funded by government money, you will turn a blind eye to what we tell you to turn the blind eye to. Because we've got 1 to 3% of the population running the whole world. And they have an agenda. And what their picture of the world should look like for them doesn't match ours. And if we're no value to them, then why are we here? Why? Why are we here?
My time is up.
Gentleman yields back. Gentleman from Texas is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I first want to also express my profound condolences to each and every one of you who've suffered loss. I have 2 kids. I'm a mom. I would do anything for my kids, and I cannot imagine the grief of losing a loved one in such a tragic way. So I want you to know how much I respect the courage that it took for you to be here today to share your grief and your pain. I represent El Paso, Texas, an incredible community right on the U.S.-Mexico border. I'm the only member of this committee who actually lives on the border, raised her kids on the border. I'm a 3rd-generation border resident. And there is no one who wants to modernize our outdated laws more than those of us who live on the border. We are the families that have for decades been trying to help the federal government treat people with dignity and humanity. And we have long been asking for reform. I think what is most frustrating to me as a member of Congress is what is happening today at this committee hearing, where we have colleagues who are exploiting people's pain for political purposes. And unfortunately, that's what's happening today. The finger pointing at the administration by members of Congress is frustrating to me as a member of Congress because we are the ones who write the laws. It is legislators who are responsible to write the laws around immigration, around border policy, and it is up to legislators to adequately fund the resources necessary.
Oh, hold on, y'all. Well, then why, if you have all of these different branches of government, why at the behest of the civilians do you play Kianis Macho? So you're going to exercise whatever powers your branch has, and you're going to flex to show the other branches that you don't agree with their direction or their mindset of the topic at hand, that no, we're not going to work with you. It's going to be gridlocked. It's going to be partisan. We're not going to deal on a bipartisan level. We don't care who gets affected. Because I did what I had to do to get to this position in this branch of government. And it doesn't include anybody else that I don't know. If it doesn't include generational wealth, power, and lineage for them. Why? What's the point? Our system is broken. It is super broken to the point where the civilians, either you're rich or you're poor at this point, in my opinion, they've been largely successful at eliminating the middle class. But the poor people, in their eyes, we just be workers. That's all we here to do. Salute to the chat. Salute to the chat. I appreciate y'all. Thank you for coming through. I hope y'all with me on this. And I know it's long and belabored, but you know, we spend a lot of time with entertainment. Like I'm looking at this Diddy thing, but the writing has been on the wall for Diddy. God gonna deal with Diddy. The demons deal with Diddy. Let that be. At the end of the day, does what Diddy did, pause. I don't even know if that was supposed to be there, y'all, but I put it there anyway. Is that more important than the laws of this land and what we're facing and what's coming? And we need to understand that this stuff is being used as a distraction for the real fight that's coming down the pike if it hasn't already hit your front door. There are some people that are already having testimonies of their entire lives being flipped upside down and affected by this illegal immigration and these unmonitored and unvetted borders. I don't think we have a clue as to what's on this soil. We had our own personal problems. Now we got other countries' problems to deal with. Ooh, child. Let's go.
I can tell you that I have been pushing a bipartisan comprehensive immigration reform bill that addresses outdated border policies and that addresses migration and immigration together. There are 8 Republicans who've had the courage to join that bill. None of them are on this committee. And that bill cannot move because of the obstacles put in front of that. The administration has tried and asked over and over again for adequate resources. They've been hamstrung by obstacles put in the way, preventing those resources from getting to where they need to be. Mr. Ivey mentioned a Senate bill so draconian, I could not have voted for it. It was enforcement only. It was, to me, not workable because it was so.
I don't want to pass that because she said that She's Democrat, and she says that her party has been asking for resources. Y'all are giving $13,000 plus in food stamp benefits to Venezuelan immigrants and over $4,400 in cash benefits. What other resources do you need? Y'all are proposing that they get housing with forgiveness loans of 0% and up to $150,000 on proposed bills on floors. But you're talking about we've been asking for resources. What other resources do you need? There is a certain leverage of resources that you don't need permission to give, and you're making sure that you exhaust those resources. But you back to the floor asking for more, like somebody's gonna say yes and agree to that foolishness when it doesn't involve any of the citizens, or better yet, the veterans of this country. You have veterans that are receiving $23 in SNAP benefits per month, but you're gonna give a Venezuelan family, illegal, undocumented immigrants, over $13,000. I wouldn't care if they had 100 people in their damn family that came across that border. Who is going to eat $13,000 worth of food per month? Let's go.
Focus, again, only on enforcement. But it wasn't Democrats who stood in the way of that. It was the folks on the other side of the aisle who torpedoed what was the most border hardening bill ever written. And that's what Republicans called it. And with regard to, Mr. Ivey, you mentioned wanting solutions, and one of our colleagues mentioned HR 2. I know you're aware of this, but their bill, HR 2, relies almost exclusively on Mexico. And if Mexico wasn't doing the job that they're determining needed to be done in HR 2, HR 2 was a fantasy. It wouldn't do anything. My point is this. When there were mass shootings, including, as Ms. Lopez mentioned, a mass shooting in El Paso, Texas, by a white supremacist, 23 people shot and murdered in cold blood with an assault-style weapon, traumatizing an entire community, we held hearings that were linked to solutions. We wanted to solve the issue. We wanted to bring resolution. We wanted to find a path forward so that people wouldn't live with the kind of pain that communities like ours that have lived through mass shootings had to live through. There really, truly, there is very little interest on the other side of working in a bipartisan way to find meaningful solutions. You all deserve that. Our country deserves that. And there are those of us in Congress fighting to get to those bipartisan solutions because we don't want to see families living in pain. We don't want you to endure the loss. We don't want anyone else to endure the loss that you all have endured.
As long as you're giving out these types of resources to illegal, undocumented immigrants and not matching that with the citizens of this soil, what outcome do you think is going to happen? You think that you're going to get cooperation? You think that that is the middle ground, so to speak? You think that that's feasible? You think that's reasonable to ask? I understand that there are differences. Y'all bear with me here. There are differences in the ideologies of what immigration is supposed to look like or what we want it to look like. We have a country where there are many people that have gone through the due process, that have followed the laws, that have put in the work, that have paid the taxes, that actually have spent time here in order to learn the laws and some American culture. Even if they don't incorporate it in their personal lives, they understand it. But when have any of those people ever received the kind of support and resources? And you telling me that the word agenda isn't applicable here? It doesn't make sense without that word. It doesn't make sense. It just doesn't.
Other colleagues are going to continue to work on those bipartisan solutions because that's what our country deserves. I hope you will join us in fighting for those bipartisan solutions because It's long past time that we get there. Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Gentlelady yields back. Ms. Nobles, did Republicans on this committee, Ms. Nobles, Republicans on this committee or any of Republican staff exploit you in any way to come to today's hearing?
No, I am not being forced to be here. I am here because I want to be here and I want changes to be made, and I'm fighting for here for my daughter. And I can't speak for everyone else, but I'm sure the other witnesses weren't even forced to be here either, and they want to because they love their children.
In fact, my understanding is our Republican staff helped you get answers to the murder of your daughter that you didn't get from anywhere else. Our staff.
Okay, I want to give some context because it's getting ready to get real spicy up in here, right? So I really don't know the the backstory on why he asked it that particular way, but we all know that there was a reason behind it. So I'm not informed enough to be able to say that that's why he did it, or to support or not support him asking the question that way. But now he's getting ready to get into the meat and potatoes of what this live is about, and that's women that have been directly affected by illegal undocumented immigrants, causing them or their family members, their children, for lack of a better term, harm and torment. And so definitely there's going to be some emotion here, but it's needed because the story that this panel is telling, their own individual stories and testimonies, reverberates through this entire country. Those are just the ones that they reached out to and could accommodate for this particular hearing, but we need to multiply the numbers and understand that this isn't just them speaking, that it is affecting or that this is happening to. They are just the voices that have been chosen to speak for and reverberate the urgency and the need for us to understand how important and vital it is that we get a handle on these borders, and that the people that are here illegally causing harm, causing chaos and disruption, they need their asses deported and sent back ASAP. That's just my little contribution. Let's go.
Help get that information by going to DHS.
You have. Yeah, yes.
How about you, Ms. Morin? Did you feel exploited anyway? That's what the Democrats just said.
No, I don't feel exploited.
You're here to tell your story about what's going on out there. Ms. Gungary?
Tell my story.
No, I do not feel exploited. I simply want to raise awareness that we need change, and my daughter's voice and her memory should not get lost in that.
Well said. Ms. Wunder?
No, I don't feel exploited in any way. As a matter of fact, I find it very interesting that all 5 minutes for both of your testimonies on the left have not had any questions for us up here, but instead of speech. And I will tell you, I'm getting tired of hearing about the most comprehensive border bill, which did nothing for for American citizens. It gave visas to people who needed to extend their visas, and it gave asylum to people coming over, and it did zero for an American citizen. And I would love somebody to answer to me what it actually did for American citizens. It did not do anything for an American citizen.
Ms. Aguirre? Ms. Aguirre?
It's insulting that you would say that to these families, that you would make an assumption that they're being used or exploited anyway. What I will do is I'll give you my number. It's 281-673-0736, and I'd like a phone call from you to see what you can do to help these families, because every single week I get bombarded with calls from victims all over the United States, but I'm just a small person with a small foundation that helps people here locally in Houston and Harris County. Not one time when her daughter was murdered and I was helping her navigate the criminal justice system did one Democrat call me to offer their assistance. It was only Republicans, and I am an independent. I vote both ways. So it's insulting. No, please don't speak over me, because I'm still talking.
Okay.
I'm done. I have the mic. I have the floor. I have the floor. If you want to answer me, you ask.
Has the time, and the witness is allowed to
So
respond.
I'm asking, you said some very broad statements. It's insulting. These people lost loved ones. They lost children. And we want to see a difference. We may not understand everything that's going on, but I assure you that we're not being used in any way. And if today somebody calls that number that wants to help from any side of the aisle, we want solutions.
That's
so
what I
I'm
just
still
talked
talking.
about.
So please don't
I just talked about
make an assumption. Don't make an assumption that we're being used. That is insulting.
The time belongs to the
This
chair.
is
The chair now yields.
insulting.
The chair yields the remainder of his time to the gentleman from Texas.
I thank the witnesses. I thank the chairman. Ms. Nungaray, your daughter was taken from you in June of 2024, this year, correct?
Yeah.
So, Miss Lady said, first of all, second of all, third of all, and fourth of all, you not get ready to talk over me. You're insulting us and my intelligence by asking, do we feel obligated to be here? Have we been forced to be here? We have real life issues going on over here where women and families have lost children at the hands and behest of these people that this administration is allowing to come here under those circumstances. We are here for a specific reason, and I need the floor for my allotted time. I feel her passion. I understand it. And I applaud her for being the voice that many on that panel need, because she has the foundation, while the foundation is servicing and being there for those that have actually lost their children and may not feel the strength at this point to have that voice that she's got to speak on their behalf. I feel her on this. Let's go.
Yes, that's correct.
She was killed by 2 Venezuelan men who crossed into Texas in March and May of this year, correct?
That's correct.
Those 2 Venezuelan men that crossed into Texas were released by this administration into the community after.
I'm going to go back just a little bit because he's getting ready to talk to the first mom and ask her certain questions. I know I might be going back just a little bit too far, but bear with me, y'all. I want you to get the full flow, ebb and flow of the circumstances as to how this first mom lost her child. And it was at the negligence of our government currently in office.
You can do to help these families, because every single week I get bombarded with calls from victims all over the United States, but I'm just a small person with a small foundation that helps people here locally in Houston and Harris County. Not one time when her daughter was murdered and I was helping her navigate the criminal justice system did one Democrat call me to offer their assistance. It was only Republicans, and I am an independent. I vote both ways.
Not one Democrat, not one.
So it's insulting. No, please don't speak over me because I'm still talking.
Okay.
I'm not done. I have the mic. I have the floor. I have the floor. If you want to answer me, you ask.
Has the time and the witness is allowed to
So
respond.
I'm asking, you said some very broad statements. It's insulting. These people lost loved ones. They lost children. And we want to see a difference. We may not understand everything that's going on, but I assure you that we're not being used in any way. And if today somebody calls that number that wants to help from any side of the aisle, we want solutions.
That's
so
what I
I'm
just
still
talked
talking.
about.
So please don't.
I just talked
don't
about
make an assumption. Don't make an assumption that we're being used. That is insulting.
Time belongs to the chair. The chair now yields. The chair yields the remainder of his time to the gentleman from Texas.
I thank the witnesses. I thank the chairman. Ms. Nungaray, your daughter was taken from you in June of 2024, this year, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
She was killed by 2 Venezuelan men who crossed into Texas in March and May of this year, correct?
That's correct.
Those 2 Venezuelan men that crossed into Texas were released by this administration into the community after crossing, correct?
That's correct.
Do you believe that your daughter would be here today if they had not been released into the United States?
I so heartedly believe that, yes.
Ms. Morin, your daughter was taken from you in August of 2023, correct?
Yes.
Killed by a man from El Salvador who crossed illegally and was a gotaway. Is that correct?
Yes.
Do you believe your daughter would be here today if the current administration were not overwhelming border patrols such that we have 2 million known gotaways over the last 3 years?
I think that if we had the policies in place that we did a few years ago that vetted the immigrants that came in, that my daughter would still be here.
Ms. Nobles, your daughter was taken from you in July of 2022. Is that correct?
Yes.
By a 17-year-old from El Salvador who entered in March of 2022, just a few months before, correct?
Correct.
Was released into the country. Is that correct?
Correct.
Do you believe that your daughter would be here today if that individual had not been released into the country according to a mass release program that has been underway for the last 3 years?
Yes, she would be alive today if they would have made that one phone call to El Salvador to check because he did have a criminal record in 2020 and gang-related tattoos.
She said one phone call. One phone call to get some insight on this man's record, on his history from the country that he was coming from. That one phone call could have made a difference in whether her child would be here or not. That's not a reflection upon the gangs, the cartels, and all of the illegals. That's a reflection upon our government.
I yield back.
Thank you. Chair recognizes the gentleman from New York, Mr. Nadler.
Thank you. Dr. Farfan-Mendez, we've heard about some devastating tragedies at today's hearing. Unfortunately, tragedies occur far too often in this country at the hands of non-citizens and citizens alike. Parents are afraid that their kids won't be safe at school, at parades, at grocery stores, and even at houses of worship. The United States has long struggled to pass meaningful gun violence prevention measures into law. Last Congress, we were able to enact some much-needed reforms, but far more must be done. How does our inability to ensure that guns are well regulated, as the Second Amendment calls for, embolden cartels and incentivize more people to migrate to the United States?
Thank you for your question, Congressman Nadler. One of the things that when we discuss organized crime is often lost in the conversation is that, like any organization, they also have operating costs. And one of these operating costs is that related to guns and the ability to perpetrate violence. And because it's so easy to traffic guns from the United States into Mexico, essentially what has happened is it has significantly lowered the cost of perpetrating violence in Mexico and other parts in the Western Hemisphere. And what these criminal groups are able to do, because violence is an essential component of their activities, is issue very credible threats to people, meaning that I can convince you, because I have an arsenal to prove it, that either you comply with what I'm saying or there will be consequences. And what we have seen is that to the extent that criminal groups are better armed and have these arsenals, again, that are very easy to acquire and traffic from the US into Mexico and other parts in the hemisphere, this creates displacement in communities, meaning that it puts pressure on migration corridors and it creates challenges in terms of addressing the migration flows that we're discussing here.
It puts pressure on everybody, from the countries that they're coming from our country to theirs, from the process at the border, the lack of accountability of them getting through. And then once they get here, nobody's keeping track of them. Nobody cares. Nobody is inquiring. And even when something happens and they commit crimes, particularly in the state of New York, is what I'm speaking on, the due process of going to court, they can't verify who this person is, so they're letting them walk right back out. They can't even hold them accountable for fines, for any type of jail stays, for any type of what they call it, violations. They can't even assess violations to them, because if they're back and forth in a revolving door, back and forth to court, then guess what? They could give names and different identities each time they hit those door fronts. They're not concerned about verifying your identity. They're not even concerned about the crimes that you commit and holding you accountable for those crimes. You know what they're concerned about? They're concerned about their agenda.
Today. And what I'm hearing today essentially is I think all of us in this room are interested in having the health and safety of our communities. And what I would say to you is that to the extent that this firearms trafficking is not addressed, it's going to be a root cause that is basically left unattended. And we will be asking questions where the answer is very clear. Again, to the extent that these criminal groups have access to firearms that are very easy to acquire from the US and also ammunition, this will make it very cheap for them to perpetrate violence. And it would put a lot of pressure on migration flows.
Thank you, Ms. Lopez. Over the past few years, we've seen harmful rhetoric thrown at religious organizations that help migrants, including the Catholic Church and the Hebrew Immigrant Aid Society, HIAS. Such rhetoric was echoed by the gunmen who murdered 11 congregants at the Tree of Life Synagogue in 2018. We've also heard attacks on religious organizations from members of this committee. Your organization is affiliated with the Roman Catholic Church of El Paso. Can you talk about how your faith calls you to serve all those in need of help, including asylum seekers?
Yes, thank you, Congressman Nadler. For me, at a very fundamental level, as a Catholic, it's important to me that every single person be treated with human dignity and respect. And at the very core of the work that we do, that's what it comes down to, is treating people with respect. Even sitting here today, having to hear the stories and the losses of the witnesses on the panels, I can't even imagine, the losses that they're dealing with and the pain that they're going through. And so we as an organization try really hard to make sure that we are treating people with that same dignity and respect, and that as attorneys, we're bound by the law. We are bound by what we are allowed to do within the legal system, and we work really hard to make sure that those individuals who do qualify for benefit, that we treat them with the respect and dignity that they deserve.
Thank you. And how do attacks on religious organizations impact your work?
It makes it really scary for us to do the work day in, day out. I will say that it doesn't hinder our work, but it certainly makes us more weary of our surroundings. Following the mass shooting in 2019, we did have to increase security around our building out of fear that we might be the next target.
So they've experienced retaliation just for doing some work in order to seek some type of justice, to establish an equilibrium in their system. to be an advocate and a voice for those that feel voiceless. I don't know if anybody has lost a child within the sound of my voice. I'm sure there have been some that have by the time you hear this. I have not, nor could I imagine doing so. But if I did, I would imagine that at some point I would not have the energy, and I would need some support, and I would need someone to echo, to be that voice for that period of time that I feel voiceless. When you carry a child, and I can only speak from a mother's standpoint because I'm not a father, nor would I try to be. It's not my assignment. But as a fetus grows and develops as a life in your stomach and in your womb, you bear that child. They say that when a woman is in childbearing stage, it is a near-death experience. I can attest to that twice. To have that child, you care for that child, you nurture that child, you protect that child, you sacrifice, make sure that that child is first. To have it prematurely taken from this world without ever having the experience of knowing what it is like to grow up and have a child of their own, having crimes committed against them that no child should ever experience, much less an adult. So yeah, I would anticipate that for a period of time, I probably would not want to exercise my voice. Now, once I get through that period, all hell gonna break loose. Because somebody gonna be brought to the table before I take my last breath. But why should those that have a voice be targeted? Why should those that have a voice that are just speaking their beliefs and their feelings, why should their lives be deemed unworthy to the point where they're being attacked? I know I kind of went left there, but that's a valid question in my opinion. We're not bringing harm to nobody else. We just want justice for why that has happened to us or those that are connected to us. Because it is not the natural order of things. It is not in the natural order of things.
Thank you. Dr. Farfan-Mendez and Ms. Lopez, you both live and work on the border. Can you please tell us about life on the border and how living there has shaped your view of immigration in the United States? Dr. Farfan-Mendez, let's start with you.
Thank you, Congressman Nadler. Well, I'm an immigrant, and let me share a story with you. August 30th is the International Day of the Disappeared, and August 31st is Overdose Awareness Day. And it's by happenstance that these 2 days happen to be together, but it seems very pertinent to the reality of North America. And in those 2 days, we set empty chairs, one on the San Diego side of the US border and one in Tijuana for the Mexican side. And those empty chairs symbolize precisely the loved ones that are no longer at the tables to gather with their loved ones. And what it meant to do, and what it is a call to action, to think about how border communities can work together. And what's interesting and pertinent to this hearing from this call to action at the border is that families on both sides came together to say these are shared tragedies and these are shared pains, and we should be thinking about how we can work together and have meaningful engagement to stop deaths on both sides of the border. And so I will let you with that story of pragmatism and hope again from the border in terms of how we can find a path forward.
Ms. Lopez.
I would say, for me, there's something really beautiful about being on the border. We have the opportunity to live a life that's quite complex, and in that, we know what it's like to be in Mexico. We know what it's like to be in the United States. We have a sharing of culture, a sharing of language, a sharing of so much, and that it almost feels like one large community along the border. And there are the complexities of immigration and immigration matters along the border that, I have family members that are unable to cross into the United States because they don't have immigration status. And so it's a complex life, but it's a very beautiful, culturally rich place to live.
Thank you. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. The gentleman from Texas.
I thank the chairman. I want to finish the line of questioning that I started before. Ms. Aguirre, I'm going to come back to you on something more specific, but just on this simple question. You told a story, Maria Gonzalez, the 11-year-old girl who was taken from her father and was killed by a 17-year-old Guatemalan, released into the United States. Is that correct? In microphones, yes. So that is correct.
So this is a mother that lost an 11-year-old at the hands of a 17-year-old male that felt like he had the right to violate her and then take her life. Prayers go out to that mom and any other mom and dad that have had to go through that experience.
Correct. And then I would say for Ms. Fundner, your son Weston lost his life to fentanyl poisoning, correct?
Correct.
Now, unlike the specifics of some of these other witnesses, you can't say for certain exactly how that fentanyl got through to your son. But you would agree that Weston is one of hundreds of thousands, correct? I think one of you testified to 300,000 lost lives. And so the many faces of fentanyl, right? The many faces of fentanyl. Can we say that we are losing more Americans to fentanyl poisoning as a direct consequence of open borders allowing fentanyl to pour into our communities? Would you agree with that, Ms. Fundner?
100%.
We have witnesses here at the table talking about the crimes that affected them directly. I would ask Sheriff Bedreau, just kind of a yes or no or quick response to this question. In 2021, there were 11,200 pounds of fentanyl seized. You go to crime in 2022.
11,200, and that's what's recorded of fentanyl. Ooh.
We had 12,000 criminal alien arrests at the border. In 23, border agents apprehended 15,000 criminals. With 2 months left in FY24, we are also at 15,000 criminal arrests, and the year isn't over yet, so it's surging. But here's the real problem. Because my colleagues on the other side of the aisle will say, oh, look, it's working, they're doing their job. But while Border Patrol has intercepted those increasing numbers of criminals, DHS whistleblowers revealed on August 11th, 24, that as many as 950,000 violent criminals have gone unidentified. In your experience, do you think it is an accurate assessment that scores, thousands of criminals are coming into the United States and being released or getting away from authorities?
That is accurate and true.
And that in your experience, you see it in real time. Is that correct, Sheriff?
In real time.
So we've talked about all of the impacts on the individuals that are testifying here. Ms. Aguirre, I wanted to see if this would surprise you. I released a report my office did titled Border Invasion, or America Invaded. And in it, I detailed 50 examples that we found, 50 examples, and there were more. We had to cut the list off in order to make sure we had room. Let me just read a few of these across the country and see if you agree that you think this is a problem and what you're experiencing in your life representing people that are victims. September 3rd, the consequences of the Biden-Harris administration's open border policies, the case of the illegal alien brutally assaulting a teenage Louisiana girl. August 30th, the case of the illegal alien who brutally assaulted a New York woman. August 17th, Brazilian migrant accused of multiple Massachusetts sex crimes, arrested. August 15th, Haitian illegal immigrant charged with raping pregnant woman at Massachusetts migrant motel. August 15th, U.S. officials nab Peruvian gang leader wanted for nearly 24 killings in home country. August 14th, machete wielder at Capitol was a legal immigrant despite being a priority, quote unquote, for detention. August 13th, migrant charged with rape in third NYC sex crime bust of an asylum seeker in 2 weeks. August 12th, NYC migrants, including one charged in sex assault 4 months ago, raped woman at knife point, beat her boyfriend. August 7th, Venezuelan migrant with suspected gang ties released to the United States before terrorizing NYC and is yet to be deported. I can go.
So we have cartels. We have prisoners that are being released so that they are not their native country's problem. They don't have to spend monies on them being imprisoned into their system on meals, a cot, and some clothing. So they release them here and then say, you know what? You can't come back. We good. You go over there, you make it do what it do. And that's exactly what they're doing. But why would they do anything different? And why wouldn't they go to other countries? Why choose the United States? Why? Because we have given them, not we, the government has given them an open-ended invitation. Not only do we invite you here, but we're going to set up shop for you. We're going to fund businesses if you're interested in a business. We're going to give you a roof over your head for next to nothing at the taxpayer's dime. We're going to let the poor people of this country foot that bill for you. And in the meantime, you can bring firearms, you can bring drugs. And remember, they've got cartels and gangs that only deal with drugs and human trafficking. You think that intelligence is not being vetted? It's not being provided to the public, but it's not being provided to the public doesn't mean it's not being vetted. It's not being tracked. These are personal relationships by design, intentional in my personal opinion. We know you crooks. We know you evil people. But we want you on this soil because we need your vote. We need a war on this turf. And because we have the most powerful, at least for now, military in the world, ain't nobody else gonna really try us. So we're gonna have to make this an in-house job. I give no sympathy or conversation to anyone that is coming to me talking about some goddamn identity politics. I don't care. That is going to be the destruction and the nail in the coffin for this country. If we don't wake up and stop sleepwalking and stop ignoring the obvious. When what is that movie Will Smith is in, Enemy of the State? Predictive programming. That was years ago. That's coming to fruition in the game that's being played right to the damn now. You got to know the game before you can play it. Chess before checkers. Let's go.
All the way back, date by date, through the year, into last year, November 4th, 2021. Without objection, I'll insert this into the record and the thousands of examples that are plaguing Americans across the country. With that background, one, Ms. Aguirre, can you confirm that these are just a sampling of what you're experiencing as a victim advocate out of Houston and people that are contacting you across the country, that this is not hyperbole, that this is not political, that these are in fact real human beings that we're trying to advocate for? And secondly, can you explain to the American people why was Maria targeted?
You know, I'm going to start with the fact that the reason there's so many sexual assaults committed by illegal immigrants is because in their countries there's very little consequences, meaning that when there's a girl found that has been raped and murdered, it's not unusual. There isn't DNA collection, and there's no embalming, and there's no autopsy. She's buried. And along with her.
So what she's saying is that they don't get a proper burial in this country because they don't want to draw attention to the circumstances surrounding this person's being unalive. People are going to question an 11-year-old child being murdered. They're going to want to know who did it, where they come from, how old they were, what their background was, and what are their consequences. So it's better just not to even bring attention because they don't value life. And especially when it's life that doesn't have anything to do with being connected to theirs.
Is what they did to her. So these predators thrive in these countries. And if you're not from those countries, you don't know that. Everybody thinks that it's like America everywhere else, and it's simply not. So when they come to this country to do this, because they're accustomed to doing that in their countries. And this is the problem with letting everybody in. And the case of Maria Gonzalez echoes this because also Maria was here illegally as well. But her and her father were living an honorable, quiet, hardworking life. While this other individual came into this country as a child migrant, came in at 17 years old. And he was 18 years old when he killed her. 3 weeks into being in this country, and he killed her. The reason he chose her is because she's a child. The second reason, because she's a beautiful little girl. And the third is because she was vulnerable. They don't even have respect for their own communities because both of these individuals were from Guatemala. Did that stop him from killing her? Absolutely not.
So one of the sources that I've been watching brought some clarity to what these gangs, because they're very smart. You got to remember something. A lot of the cartels, that's the word I'm going to use, outside of gangs, the cartels are a strict run, centralized organization that's very disciplined and very savage. When it comes to the cartels, what they're doing in the United States and what is being documented as them doing is they're targeting undocumented communities that don't cause no trouble. They live off the grid, they separate, and they do their own things. So they basically bring their own culture to this soil, and they hope to be able to sustain themselves generationally in peace. They don't bother nobody. They're self-sustaining. They grow their own food. They handle their own business, and they're off the grid. So they're targeting those communities because they're undocumented. They're bullying and they're seizing their entire communities and environmental spaces. Why? Because the government on paper is not aware that they even exist. And that's how they're gaining territory, because these spaces are sporadically throughout our entire country. These people are experienced and vetted on living off of the grid. So why not? They stay off the grid, the cartels stay off the grid, and they'll go, and they're gonna bully themselves with the drugs, the guns, and the savagery mindset to basically take over their environments and make them succumb to being slaves of the cartel. This is real shit. This is real. Let's go.
Absolutely not. And it was not necessarily something that we could say, oh, well, you know, she passed away peacefully. No, she passed away fighting. She passed away hurting. She passed away losing nails, biting him, trying to get him off of her in her own home. These individuals see a little girl and they have an appetite for her. They see a woman and they have an appetite for her because they do this in their country and it's not unusual. These are the type of people that we're letting in. By not checking, we don't know who's coming in. And you're not only, while you were reading your list, a lot of these people that they're harming are within their own seeking, the people that are in their hotels as well, that are also migrants that are being hurt. So they're hurting each other. And the same, like as you two are here in the testimony, Ms. Lopez and Dr. Mendez, you guys advocate for immigrants, but immigrants are also being victims of these bad immigrants. I just don't understand how we could let everybody in without checking them.
Thank you, Ms. Aguirre. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Gentleman from California Directors.
Which one?
Oh, we'll go down the line. I'll do whatever you swallow. Okay.
I'm sorry to each of you for the circumstances that have brought you here. I'm truly sorry that this has happened to your loved ones and the persons responsible for the deaths of Weston, Arlene.
I don't want to hear him. I didn't get a good vibe when I listened to it the first time, and I really don't want to hear him right now. So we're going to go, bear with me while I kind of fast forward through him. If you want to go, I'll put the, go back and watch. I'll put the link to this committee meeting in the chat after the live is over, and then you can go back. But yeah, I ain't feeling this dude at all. I smell agenda with him too. So that's where we're going with that. Hold on a second, y'all. Actually, let's go ahead. Oh God, I'll go ahead and stomach it. Because we really need to see the bullshit. Yeah, hold on a second, y'all.
Take theirs.
Border is a very important issue for Donald Trump, and the fact that he would communicate to Republican senators and congresspeople that he doesn't want us to solve the border problem because he wants to blame Biden for it is really appalling.
But I would acknowledge President Trump failed, along with Republicans. They failed in 2018 to actually move a border security bill to tighten this so that we weren't dealing with this crisis right now.
We all felt that the border was a complete disaster, myself included. First, it was an effort to make law, which requires you to deal with Democrats. And then a number of our members thought it wasn't good enough. And then our nominee for president didn't seem to want us to do anything at all.
It's your colleagues in your party, sir, who torpedoed this, who didn't get the facts right on what you just outlined was in that measure. They killed it. Ironically, not Democrats.
Right.
Each of you came here today, not easily, but you expected a serious forum. You are serious. This issue is serious. They are not serious. The chairman yesterday tweeted, are the aliens... The chairman yesterday tweeted, when President Trump was in office, the border was secure and illegal aliens weren't eating your pets. He also then tweeted, again, knowing that you're going to come here to talk about your loved ones who were lost, you would expect some seriousness, some gravitas, respect for the people who came here. What in the hell is this? The chairman tweets, protect our ducks and kittens in Ohio because he goes down some crazy rabbit hole, completely debunked that aliens.
That's not a rabbit hole. We got Haitians in the state of Ohio that are breaking the neck. There's footage, and I have some of it. Breaking the necks of geese and ducks, walking down the street with them. I saw a video, and you cannot show it on YouTube, where a Haitian was in an alleyway, and I saw this with my own eyes, y'all. I couldn't eat for the rest of the night and half of the day the next day. It disturbed my whole spirit. 30 seconds seemed like it was a 2-minute to 5-minute reel of this Haitian man literally had this cat's neck in his hand, his body parts or the torso in the other hand. So with one hand, he was trying to snap the spine, and the other one, he was trying to snap the neck. Now, they don't say cats have 9 lives for nothing. So whether he was using it as a ceremonial witchcraft type of voodoo stuff going on, or whether he was trying to, make it a delicatessen, he was trying to unalive that cat. And I'm telling you, he was out in broad daylight with this cat, and he was fervently trying to unalive this cat. So while you over here, no matter how the Republicans have used this as a marketing tool to benefit them, the fact still remains that we have people illegal. I'm not going to even say Haitians. I am going to say illegal, undocumented immigrants coming into this country, bringing their lifestyles, bringing their habits, and bringing their culture into this country, and they're having a field day because it doesn't in any way, shape, or form in most aspects match how we live over here in the United States. So this is not faboonery. I know that's a word I just made up. I couldn't think of nothing else. Buffoonery. I like faboonery, so that's what we're going to go with. That's my shit, okay? Yeah, guess what? That's what we're going to go with. That is real. That is footage. These cameras are something else. So not only do they catch the good, but they're going to catch the bad too. And I'm telling you, they're here already. That's my point. I don't care where they're coming from. We need to be aware that they're here. They are already in place. They've been coming over for the past 3.5 years, centralized, and even more so before that. But I'm talking about a free-for-all for at least 3 years. That's a long time to get your affairs in order, to get your ducks in a row to serve what your agenda is. So not only do we have the government's agenda, but now we got people over here that we have no idea how they live, no concept of their lifestyles, their records, their history, bringing them, their persons, and their people with like minds to this soil, and they showing up and showing out. And let's not forget, a lot of them are military-aged men. I noticed that off the rip. I was like, how come you don't see a whole bunch of children and women with their mamas coming across the border? How come you don't see them carrying elderly men across these lines through these ports of entry? They're not playing. And the government that we are a part of or subjected to at the very least, they ain't doing nothing but playing. They're playing games with our lives, with our families, with our rights.
Aliens are eating pets? My God. Are you okay, Mr. Chairman? Because last year, for a very long time, you tweeted and promoted Kanye West as he was calling for genocide against the Jews, and you kept it up. And now, when we have victims coming here, you're tweeting this nonsense. I don't know why you would do this. I hope you're okay. I don't know if the aliens who are eating your ducks are in the room with us right now. But, Mr. Chairman, this is a serious issue. These people have loved ones who have been lost, and you tweeted this. So I'm sorry that you came here expecting seriousness. You are serious. They are not, and you deserve a hell of a lot more than what you're getting from them. And I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. The gentleman from Wisconsin is recognized.
Thank
you very much.
Okay,
I hope you appreciate the drama that just came out here. We passed a bill called H.R. 2. It's the best secure the border bill that has ever passed through a House in the United States Congress. And if you read it, it secures the border. It accomplishes what you would like to see happen. And by the way, to secure the border, it doesn't even require an act of Congress at this point. The president undid it, and the vice president, as the borders are, undid it. They can put it back together.
Ooh. Ooh. Oh. So he just dropped a whole bar. They dismantled it. They can put it back together. They don't need the floor. They don't need the parties. They do not need anybody else co-signing them to do so. To those, I had a dear, lifelong friend, I'm talking about since 5th or 6th grade, say to me, in a fit of emotion, I understand what you're saying, but I'm voting for Kamala because I don't like Trump. I don't like his attitude. But did you eat when he was in office? Did you eat? Did you have the same issues that you having right now? Bread $5 a loaf. Organic milk, $8 to $9 in New York. A gallon. Gas has been hot as hell up until political season started. It started to just kind of dwindle down a little bit, but it ain't even, listen, you ain't doing us no favors with these gas prices, but it's enough to be noticeable that it has dipped a little taste, right? Our school systems, we got libraries and book fairs where they have illustrations and books for our kindergartners. This is not alleged. That show a male giving another male fellatio as an illustration in a book. We all know if we grown or if we ain't grown, we still got enough sense to know that you can't explain that as something else. Perversion is at an all-time high. Y'all don't be distracted by things that don't affect your everyday life from things that do. I want to take a second and say shout out to Mel Doug. Thank you for the super chat. I appreciate you so much. The only time the left gives a damn about Haitians is when they can use them as victims. As for the men coming, they are mostly gang members. And they know that, Mel. They know that. And I agree with you, because the last time the Haitians tried to come across the borders, we got a whole bunch of footage of officers on horses with whips. How quickly we may forget. But now we have given them the open door to come in, where just a couple of years ago, they were beating them away with whips and horses to remind them, in my opinion, fair use is in effect. In my opinion, slavery ain't gone. It just evolved over here in these parts. Let's go. We're not gonna do this too much longer, because I don't know how much longer I can take. We're just trying to get through and convey the message that they're a problem. The legal, undocumented immigrants coming into this country, unmonitored, unchartered, unsupervised, and untracked, not only becomes this country's problem, but the people that get up every day and make it do what it do, to put the grind in, that's proactive, that don't bother nobody, are at risk, are becoming victims, not by the cartels alone, but by those that facilitate their entry into this country without consequence.
There any time that they want to. It's as simple as that. Ms. Funder, last week in my home state of Wisconsin, an illegal alien gang member from Venezuela was charged with domestic violence, sexual assault, child abuse, and strangulation. Are you surprised?
I mean, no.
Are you surprised that he already had active warrants in a neighboring county for similar offenses?
Absolutely not.
Mr. Boudreau, Sheriff Boudreau, would you be surprised that this illegal alien had 2 fictitious immigration documents on him, including a social security card when he was arrested?
Not surprised at all.
Would you be surprised that during the investigation by the police chief in Prairie du Chien, Wisconsin, he uncovered that this illegal alien came to the United States about a year ago in El Paso?
Not shocking.
Since he came across in El Paso, he was arrested in Minneapolis in November of 2023 for receiving stolen property. Would that surprise you at all?
No.
Would it surprise you that Minneapolis did not issue a detainer to ICE for his deportation?
Would not shock me.
Minneapolis being a sanctuary city.
It wouldn't shock him, because those departments and those organizations don't communicate and they don't work together. One could care less about the other. It just sounds good on paper. It sounds good when it comes to the legalities of the legalese language of the court system, considering if somebody gets a class action suit or somebody of higher hierarchy decides to take them to task and call them to task, guess what? They got this protection in place. Well, we don't talk to ICE, so I don't know what ICE has got going on. Or we don't talk to the FBI, because we don't know what the FBI going on. These organizations and these departments and these governmental agencies do not work together. They're not cohesive. They're very independent. It is a facade. It is a smoke screen to people like you and me that are trying to figure this thing out so we can prepare. We are at war. It is a spiritual war more than any other war, but it is several wars going on. Make no mistake about what we're going through. But I will say this, and not to veer off subject, but it just dropped in my spirit. God sits high. We sit low. Even though God is in us, there are still a Most High in my belief system and in my opinion. I'm not doing this, and I'm not sending these messages out and reverberating them to fearmonger. I am doing it for awareness, so you could arm yourself with spiritual armor. One thing I think that our culture really does focus on and centralizes on more than not is what we have control over. But if you really are realistic and you're logical and you're thinking from a logical standpoint, there's very little we have control over. Very little. I choose to depend, even though I recognize the God within me, I'm still a fallible human in body. That's why our third eyes are always tried to be calcified to block the spirit. And I'm here to tell you, the war we're in, if your spiritual eye is not open and clear and you're not connected to it, you will become collateral damage. At this point in my life, I fear nothing. If there are certain things that trigger me, I address it through spiritual armor. You should too. But understand that the enemy, inner me, can only operate from one location at a time. God is omnipresent. Get with it. And if you don't know, now you know. Let's go.
And on December 1st, 2023, in Dane County, which is Madison is the seat of Dane County, he was charged with strangulation, suffocation, false imprisonment, battery, and disorderly conduct. Would that surprise you at all?
No.
And Sheriff Boudreaux, are you from California?
I am.
I did not hear your opening testimony. Isn't it correct that the vice president called for the end of ICE detainers as an elected official?
Correct.
Mr. Chairman, I think we should have a hearing in the state of Wisconsin. Prairie du Chien is a community of about 5,000 people, beautiful little community south of La Crosse on the Mississippi River. And as a result of the failure, certainly in Minneapolis, probably in Dane County also, there is a person that has come to that little community now that has been charged with violent crimes, including against a minor. And as we're hearing from the people that are here today, they're not surprised at all that this would happen.
And that's the problem, is that nobody is surprised. It is becoming normalized at an accelerated rate, which is, to me, part of the agenda of allowing these different savages, cartels, and gangs coming in from other countries, is to accelerate the normalization of savagery, to accelerate the normalization of pedophilia, to accelerate the normalization of things being out of order of God's structure, of God's intended and written scripture and structure. That's the point. Let's not lose that. If it becomes normal, then you don't look for it anymore. If it becomes normal, it's not foreign to you anymore. It doesn't strike a nerve. It doesn't incite or ignite rage. Being vocal, saying, no, that ain't right. This ain't right. And I'm not standing for this. And I'm not teaching my kids this. You got kids that don't have any hope. They don't have nothing to live for. They don't have a reason to get up and go hard every day. Now, if you God's chosen ones, and if you know, you know, if you don't, it's okay. Then you wake up with purpose. But if you don't follow or walk in that purpose, you're going to lose it and you're going to lose yourself. But everybody ain't chosen people. The Bible tells you everybody ain't going to make it. 2/3 out of 3/3 is going to perish for the lack of knowledge and understanding. The only way you can understand is through spirit. If you don't have a spiritual life, get one. That's your only hope. Living in this world, living in this time, and living under these circumstances. I was going to let that play a little bit longer, but I'm going to end it right there. Because this is deeper than a judiciary committee meeting. This is even deeper, no disrespect, to the mothers that have lost their children, to the legal undocumented immigrants coming into this country that feel that they have no consequences to their action. You may not in this country, but that's being held accountable to another man. God says, hi. As long as you don't care about your soul perishing, it is what it is. But I want to say, in conclusion and in closing, I appreciate the ones, because let me tell you something. I come from an environment on YouTube where it seems like the views and the likes seem to determine your worth in this sector, in this area, in this environment. But my calling is much bigger than that. And I can name quite a few people in the same space where their calling is much bigger than that. Stay on course. If you have 5 people watching or 1 person watching, if you feel a stirring in your spirit and you feel compelled to say something, no matter who's watching, that may be an indication that you're chosen. Because people are only going to stay where the message reverberates and where they can connect. I'm okay with that. I'm obedient. I'm not seeking approval. I'm not seeking popularity. I have kept a low profile my whole life, and yet know and have known my reach and my power. Because God says when it's time, if it becomes time for you to reach the masses. But if I touch 1 person, if I reach 1 person, if I reverberate with 1 person in my soul, I'm good with that. Because that was God ordained and it was meant to be just for that reason. Which means I have served my purpose, even if it's just for that moment. Which means I'm on the right track and I'm doing what I'm supposed to do. And with that, y'all, I appreciate you being here. Thank you for listening. For those that are coming in to catch the replay and you've lasted this long, I appreciate you as well. Thank you. Right? And I will see y'all on the next live or the next video, pre-record, whatever it is I decide to do. I appreciate you. And peace and blessings to my chat. Thank you to my mods. Thank you to my new sub. If you haven't considered, I'm not sub, member. If you haven't considered membering up at some point, I know that the value, I don't come on every single day. However, I know when I do come, I bring it. And if it reverberates with you and it resonates with you, listen to that. Just listen to it. But I'm here on purpose. I'm not here for the dollars. I'm not here for the views. I'm not here for the subs. I'm not here for the support when it comes to people that are looking for those things. I'm here for people with like minds. I'm here for people that care about their children. I'm here for people that care about the community. I'm here for people that have a spiritual life and health. That's who I'm here for. And I know I can get long-winded, so without that, without what they say, without further ado, I do look, I've been playing around, so y'all just entertain me for a second. For those in the last of this bomb. I have been playing around with these little sound effects. And so I just want to clap for myself real quick and for my chat. Yes. PC. That's right, Talia Bignat. I love that name. That just flows off the tongue. Yes. And I think that's it. I think that's it. It's applicable to the situation. I'm not going to overdo it, but I appreciate y'all. So with that being said, peace and blessings. I'll see y'all on the next round.